The coffee was always perfect at my brother's house. It arrived just as I sat down, black in a heavy ceramic mug. No sugar, no milk, just how I liked it. "Your morning fuel, Evelyn," David would say, placing it before me with a soft clink. It was our Tuesday ritual. He insisted on it after our mother passed. He said I shouldn't be alone in that big house so much. I appreciated it. Truly, I did. The house was quiet, too quiet sometimes. Mom's absence was a physical thing, a hollow space in the hallways. David's house was all warm wood and gentle chaos, filled with the sounds of his two teenage boys. Tuesdays were my anchor. I would bring over the mail I didn't understand, insurance forms, pension statements. David was a financial advisor. It made sense for him to look. "Let me handle it, Evie," he'd say, taking the envelope. "You've got enough on your plate." He'd slide a document in front of me. "Just sign here so I can talk to them on your behalf." I'd sign. It was easier. The coffee was always perfect. The first change was small. My car needed new tires. David offered to take it in. "The shop by my office gives me a deal," he explained. "I'll drop it off. They'll give me a loaner for you." It was kind. I didn't like dealing with mechanics. He brought the car back 2 days later. The bill was on my passenger seat. It was higher than I expected, substantially higher. When I mentioned it, David looked pained. "Oh, Evie, they found a lot more. The alignment was dangerously off. The brakes were at 50%. I couldn't let you drive it like that." He put a hand on my shoulder. "Your safety is worth any price. Don't worry about the money." I felt foolish for questioning it. He was right. Safety was paramount. I thanked him. He waved it off. The next Tuesday, there was a new document with my coffee. It was a limited power of attorney for automotive and household maintenance matters only. "This way I can just get these things handled," David said. "No more surprise bills. I can approve the work up front." It seemed logical, efficient. I signed. The coffee tasted especially good that day. Then it was the house. A small leak under the kitchen sink. David called his plumber. The plumber found subfloor corrosion. It became a full kitchen pipe replacement. The bill was 5 figures. David sat me down at his dining table, not the kitchen island. "It's a big number, Evelyn, but the alternative is a flood. It could ruin the foundation." He had a solution. "We should just put the house on a line of credit. Consolidate these big repairs. The monthly payment will be manageable." He had the paperwork ready. I signed. The line of credit was against my house, my only asset. I didn't read the terms. David had summarized them. He was the expert. My weekly visits began to include his wife, Clara. She was a gentle, smiling woman. She'd restock my fridge with groceries I hadn't asked for. "We just worry you're not eating right, all alone," she'd say, putting organic kale in my crisper. She started coming by on Fridays, too, to help me organize. One Friday, she gently suggested my study was becoming a clutter magnet. Mom's old desk was in there, my filing cabinets. "All this paper is a fire hazard, Evelyn, and so stressful to look at. Let's get it sorted." Over the next month, file boxes were carried out to a shredding service. "Old tax returns," David said. "Past 7 years, they're just liability." "Outdated medical records," Clara cooed. "You don't need that sadness around." I felt a pang as I saw the boxes go. They felt like my history. But they were probably right. It was just paper. The first true betrayal was quiet, calm. My daughter, Maya, was getting married in California. She sent the save the date a year in advance. I talked of nothing else for months. I found a dress. I booked a flight. 2 weeks before the wedding, David and Clara came over together on a Thursday, not a Tuesday. They looked concerned. David held an envelope. "We got this from Maya's wedding planner, Evie. He slid out a printed email. It said, due to last-minute venue constraints and catering numbers, they had to reduce the guest list. Regrettably, my invitation was being rescinded. A live stream link would be provided. My heart crumpled like the paper the email was printed on. But she would have called me, I whispered. Clara took my hand. She's so stressed, sweetie. She probably couldn't bear to tell you herself. You know how she is. I did know how she was, impulsive, a bit scattered. It hurt. It hurt so deeply I couldn't breathe. It's better this way, David said softly. That cross-country flight would have been brutal on you. The crowds, the noise. He patted my hand. We'll watch the stream right here. We'll make a day of it. The day of the wedding, they came over with a cake. We watched the ceremony on my laptop. The stream was pixelated. The audio lagged. I saw my only daughter get married from 5,000 miles away. David and Clara held my hands. They said all the right, comforting things. I felt erased. After that, the language shifted. It was no longer, let me help. It became, you need us to. My credit card was declined at the pharmacy. David sighed. I had to put a limit on it, Evie. You were getting forgetful. Online donations, repeat purchases, it's a common pattern. I didn't remember any unusual purchases. He showed me a statement on his tablet. There were charges I didn't recognize. See, that's what I mean, it's okay. We'll handle it. Clara began driving me to my doctor's appointments. She'd come into the exam room. She'd finish my sentences. She's been so tired, doctor, Clara would say, and her memory, little things slip. The doctor, a new young man I didn't know well, would nod sympathetically. He started talking to Clara more than to me. At a Tuesday coffee, David mentioned a name. Dr. Riggs, a top geriatric specialist, just for an assessment. I said I didn't need a specialist. David's face fell into an expression of weary concern. Evelyn, please, don't be difficult. We're trying to keep you safe and independent. This is the first step. The word difficult hung in the air. It felt like a verdict. I went to Dr. Riggs. Clara came in with me. She provided a detailed family history of my confusion. Dr. Riggs gave me a cognitive test. I stumbled on a few questions. I was nervous. He wrote a report. It mentioned age-associated cognitive decline and potential for poor financial judgment. A copy was sent to David, not to me. That was my silent awakening. It was a Tuesday. The coffee was in my hand. David was explaining a new document, something about adding his name to my investment accounts for ease of management. I looked at him. I really looked. I saw the calm certainty in his eyes, the pity, the absolute control. He was my little brother. I had helped raise him when our father left. I saw not a helper, but a soft-faced conqueror. And I knew this was not care. This was a quiet legal takeover. My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. A deep, cold clarity settled in me, like a stone sinking to the bottom of a still pond. I did not confront him. I gave no sign. I simply nodded. I took the pen. Where do I sign? I asked, my voice meek. He pointed to the line. I signed. Thank you, Evelyn, he said, relief in his voice. This takes such a weight off my mind. I sipped my coffee. It was bitter. I had never noticed the bitterness before. That afternoon, I went home. I did not call anyone. I did not cry. I sat at the kitchen table, the one David had not yet suggested replacing. I began to think, not with emotion, but with process. They believed I was confused. They believed I was compliant. That was my only advantage. The next day, I walked to the local library. I used a public computer. I created a new email address. I used a name from my mother's maiden line. I bought a small, cheap notebook with cash. I began to document. I wrote down every date I could remember, every document I'd signed, every bill that seemed inflated. I recorded Clara's Friday visits, David's Tuesday explanations. I wrote in clear, simple sentences, just facts. I had no old files, they were shredded, but I had my memory. And I had access to my own home. I found the filing cabinet they'd missed, tucked behind coats in the hall closet. It held older records. I found the original title to my house. I found my mother's will. I took them to the library. I used the scanner to make digital copies. I sent them to my new secret email. I went to the county recorder's office. I asked for the grant deed for my property. The clerk pulled it up. I saw it, my name, then a new line. It showed a home equity line of credit for an amount that made me dizzy. It was recorded 6 weeks after I'd signed the kitchen repair paperwork. The maximum draw was for 80% of my home's value. I took a photo with the old digital camera I used for bird watching. I went to the bank, my bank. I asked for statements for the last 2 years. The teller knew me. She printed them, no questions asked. I sat in my car and reviewed them. I saw regular transfers out to an account I didn't recognize, categorized as family assistance. I saw the large payment to the car shop, the plumbing company. I also saw the credit card payments David had taken over. The charges he'd shown me were there. But so were others, charges at high-end stores, a resort charge. The card was in my name, but I had never made those purchases. I took more photos. The next step required help, but not from family. I researched online. I looked for lawyers who specialized in elder law and financial exploitation. I avoided the big firms. I looked for a solo practitioner. I found one. Her name was Anya Petrova. Her website was plain. Her biography said she had worked for Adult Protective Services. I called from a payphone near the post office. I spoke clearly. I gave no names yet. I outlined the situation in 3 factual sentences. There was a long silence on the line. "Can you come to my office tomorrow?" she asked. Her voice was calm, direct. "Yes," I said. I took the bus. I told Clara I was going to the botanical garden. Anya Petrova's office was small, tidy. She was younger than I expected. She had sharp, observant eyes. She did not treat me like I was confused. She listened. For an hour, she just listened as I laid out my timeline, my notebook. Then I showed her the photos, the deed, the bank statements. She leaned back in her chair. "This is a pattern," she said. "A classic one, the isolation, the control over information, the manufactured evidence of incapacity." She looked at me. "What do you want to happen, Evelyn?" I thought for a moment. "I want my affairs back, my house, my money, my name. And your brother." "I want him to stop," I said. My voice was quiet. "I want it to be impossible for him to ever do this again, to me or to anyone." Anya nodded. She understood. "We will need to move carefully. He will have the documents you signed. He will have the doctor's report. He will claim he was acting in your best interest." She outlined a plan. It was all paperwork, no drama. First, we would revoke every power of attorney, in writing, notarized. We would file the revocations with every financial institution, by certified mail. Second, we would send a formal letter to David and Clara. It would state I was fully capable and resuming control. It would demand an accounting of all transactions made on my behalf. Third, we would hire a private forensic accountant. My money would pay for it. We would trace every dollar. "He will not comply with the accounting," Anya predicted. Then we petition the court. We ask for a full financial investigation and a temporary freeze on the assets he controls. She paused. "He may escalate. He may file for guardianship over you, using that doctor's report." The word guardianship was cold, final. "He might," I agreed. "Then we fight it," she said, "with independent medical evaluations, with our own evidence. Are you prepared for that?" I looked out her small window at the gray sky. Yes, I said. I was. We began. The notary public came to Anya's office. I signed a stack of revocation forms. I signed a retainer agreement. I signed authorization forms for the accountant. It felt different than signing at David's kitchen island. Each signature was a reclaiming. Anya mailed the letters to David, to my bank, to the investment firm. The response was not what I expected. There was no outburst, no frantic call. Silence. For 2 Tuesdays, there was no invitation for coffee. The silence was heavier than any accusation. Then a letter arrived at my house, from a lawyer, not David's, a new one. It was a formal notice. It stated that David, acting out of concern for my welfare, was petitioning the court to be appointed my temporary conservator. The petition cited the doctor's report. It cited the erratic spending he had prevented. It expressed fear that I was now under the influence of unscrupulous third parties exploiting my vulnerability. It was brilliant. He had cast Anya as the predator, himself as the vigilant protector. The hearing was set for 3 weeks away. This was the secondary attack, the legal counterstrike. I brought the letter to Anya. She read it. She almost smiled. It was a thin, hard smile. Good, she said. He's shown his hand. Now we show ours. The procedural war began in earnest. Anya filed our response. We objected to the conservatorship. We demanded a court-appointed, independent medical examination. We submitted my notebook as an exhibit, a log of my own clear-minded observations. We submitted the photos of the financial records, the deed. The forensic accountant, a man named Leo with tired eyes, worked fast. He produced a preliminary report. It was devastating in its dry language. It identified numerous substantial irregularities. The car repair bill was triple the market rate. The plumbing company was owned by Clara's cousin. The family assistance transfers matched the timing of deposits into David's personal account. The credit card charges I didn't recognize, they were for Clara's personal shopping, for David's golf club dues. Leo found one more thing. 2 months after the line of credit was opened, a large sum was drawn. It didn't pay for repairs. It was transferred to an investment account, an account in David's name only. It was a down payment on a vacation property. My house was paying for my brother's lake house. Anya added this to our filings. The hearing was not a dramatic trial. It was in a small, plain courtroom. There was no jury, just a judge in robes looking bored. David and Clara sat at one table with their lawyer. I sat with Anya. David looked at me with profound sadness, not anger, sadness. His lawyer argued that I was a declining widow, that I was being manipulated by a lawyer chasing a contingency fee. He presented the doctor's report. Then Anya stood. She spoke quietly. She presented the timeline. She presented the financial analysis. She presented the signed documents, showing how each new control was gained just after a moment of engineered crisis. She called the forensic accountant to testify. Leo spoke in numbers, percentages, transfers, inflated invoices. It was a dry recitation. It was more powerful than any shout. The judge's boredom vanished. He leaned forward. He took notes. David's lawyer called him to the stand. David was perfect, concerned, loving. He spoke of his fear for me, his late-night worries. He said he'd used his own money to cover my mistakes before taking over. He said the vacation property was an investment for my future care. He was so convincing. For a moment, I doubted my own memory. Then Anya stood for cross-examination. She had no theatrics. She held a single sheet of paper. Mr. Jenkins, you stated you used your own funds to cover your sister's expenses prior to assuming power of attorney. Is that correct? Yes, David said, earnest. Can you identify any such transaction from your personal accounts to your sister in the year before the first power of attorney was signed? David hesitated. I'd have to check my records. I have your bank records here, subpoenaed for this hearing, Anya said mildly. I see no such transfers. Would you like to see? David's face paled slightly. I may have misspoken. It was more in-kind support. Our time, our care. I see, Anya said. She moved on. The plumbing company, Aquashore, is the owner, Michael Finch, related to your wife? David blinked. He's a distant cousin, I believe. And the invoice from Aquashore was paid from my client's line of credit. Was a competitive bid obtained for that $15,000 repair. It was an emergency, David said. His voice tightened. The car repair bill from Precision Auto, the one you cited as evidence of her financial confusion. That shop is owned by your business partner, correct? Silence filled the room. David did not answer. The judge looked at him. You need to answer the question, Mr. Jenkins. Yes, David whispered. Anya sat down. She had asked 4 questions. The court-appointed doctor testified next. He had examined me for 2 hours. He stated that while I had some normal, age-related memory slowing, I showed no impairment in understanding my financial situation or legal matters. He called Dr. Riggs's report superficial and overly reliant on second-hand anecdotes. The judge called for a recess. He returned 15 minutes later. He denied the petition for conservatorship. He called the evidence of exploitation credible and disturbing. He ordered David to provide a full, verified accounting of every dollar of my money he had touched within 30 days. He issued a temporary restraining order, prohibiting David from contacting me or accessing any of my assets. He referred the file to the district attorney's office for possible criminal investigation. The gavel fell. It was over. It had taken 45 minutes. David looked at me from across the room. The sadness was gone, replaced by a raw, sheer shock, then a flicker of something else, fear. He stood up. He opened his mouth as if to speak to me. Clara pulled his arm. She was crying silent tears. They hurried out a side door. I did not feel triumph. I felt a vast, hollow exhaustion. Anya touched my arm. It's a good ruling. The restraining order is key. The DA referral is serious. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait for his accounting. He won't be able to produce a clean one. Then we sue for civil recovery. We go after his assets to repay yours. The lake house will likely be first. She packed her briefcase. He will probably try to settle, to avoid the DA. I nodded. We walked out into the bland courthouse hallway. The aftermath was not a single event. It was a long, slow unfolding. The district attorney's office did open an investigation. David's lawyer contacted Anya. They wanted to settle. The negotiations were conducted in dry legal letters, offers, counteroffers. It took months. In the end, David signed a civil settlement. He agreed to repay every misappropriated dollar with interest. He agreed to sign over the title to the lake house, which was sold. The equity covered most of the debt. He agreed to permanent, mutual no-contact order. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue further civil action. The DA's criminal investigation was put on hold, pending his compliance. The settlement was a stack of paper 2 inches thick. I signed it. Anya notarized it. It was finished. I moved my accounts to a new bank. I hired a legitimate, vetted financial manager who reported only to me. I had the locks on my house changed, a quiet, procedural task. The first Tuesday after the settlement was finalized, I woke early. I made my own coffee. I used the cheap grocery store blend. I sat at my own kitchen table, the one David had wanted to replace. The silence of the house was different now. It was not a hollow silence. It was a clean one. My daughter, Maya, called that afternoon. She had never known about the wedding invitation lie. David had intercepted her emails to me for months, she discovered. He had told her I was traveling or unwell when she called. When she finally got through, after the hearing, she was devastated. Apologies poured out. We cried together on the phone. It was a painful, healing conversation. She and her new husband visited. The house was filled with real laughter. It did not fix everything, but it was a start. Months passed, seasons changed. I took a class at the community center. It was on basic home repair. I learned to fix a leaky faucet. It was satisfying. I saw David once from a distance. He was entering an office building. His shoulders were slumped. He looked older. I felt nothing, not anger, not pity, just a quiet recognition. He was a stranger who shared my childhood. The emotional processing was the longest part. I did not hate him. Hate would have been a connection. I grieved the brother I thought I had. I grieved the trust that was not just broken, but systematically dismantled. The grief was a quiet companion. It lessened with time, but never fully left. It was not a wound. It was a scar, a record of what happened. I lived my life. I read, I gardened, I saw my friends. The fear of being vulnerable never completely left, but I managed it. I had systems. My lawyer reviewed any major document. My financial manager was transparent. I was careful, but I was not a prisoner. A year after the settlement, a certified letter arrived. It was from the state licensing board for financial advisors. They informed me that David Jenkins had voluntarily surrendered his license. He was no longer permitted to practice. There was no fanfare, no public disgrace, just a line in a bureaucratic database. It was the final, quiet consequence. He could not do this to anyone else. That felt like the true justice, more than the repaid money, more than the lake house. It was the removal of the tool he had used. I filed the letter in a new filing cabinet. I had bought it myself. It was the last piece of paper for the story. I sit here now, in my study. The room is mine again. No one organizes it but me. The afternoon light is soft through the window. I think of those perfect cups of coffee, the gentle concern in David's eyes. It was all so quiet, so polite. The greatest dangers are not the loud ones. They are the ones that arrive with a smile, holding your favorite mug. They convince you that the prison being built around you is for your own safety. They make you hand them the key, one signed document at a time. I got my life back, through paperwork and patience, through calm observation. But some things you can never get back. The belief that family is a sanctuary, the unguarded moment of trust. That is the permanent cost. The question that stays with me is not a loud one. It whispers. It is the only thing I still do not understand. How did he make the coffee taste so good, right up until the very end? The final bills from Anya Petrova and the forensic accountant arrived on the same day. 2 crisp, professional invoices. They were substantial numbers, but I wrote the checks without hesitation. They were the cost of my freedom. I filed the receipts. My new filing system was logical, clear. Everything had its place. The house felt different. It was no longer just a place I lived. It was a reclaimed territory. I noticed small things. A scratch on the floor from when David's boys had moved a chair. A faint smell of Clara's perfume lingered in the hall closet. These were not painful reminders. They were simply evidence. I cleaned the closet. I polished the scratch. The house became mine again, inch by inch. My new financial manager, a woman named Susan, scheduled monthly calls. She explained everything, every fee, every investment choice. She sent reports in large, clear print. I asked questions. She answered them without condescension. It was a business relationship. It was clean. I started volunteering at the local library. I helped sort book donations. It was quiet, methodical work. No one knew my story. I was just Evelyn, the new volunteer. The simplicity of it was a balm. A neighbor, Mrs. Gable, stopped me one afternoon. She was older than me, sharp-eyed. "Haven't seen your brother's car in ages," she said, watering her roses. "No," I agreed. "He's been busy." She nodded slowly. "Good. He was always in a rush, that one, cluttered up the street." She snipped a dead bloom. "You look lighter, Evelyn." I smiled. It was a real smile. "I feel lighter." That was the only conversation about it. It was enough. The civil settlement money was restored to my accounts. The numbers were familiar again, secure. I used a portion to fix the things David's contractors had supposedly fixed. A real plumber came. He found the original pipes were fine. The subfloor corrosion was a fiction. He charged me $200 for the inspection. I paid him gladly. I had the house professionally appraised. For my own knowledge, the value had increased despite the financial turbulence. It was a solid, tangible fact. I put the appraisal in my new filing cabinet. Maya visited again, this time for a full week. We cooked together. We talked about nothing and everything. She did not tiptoe around me. She treated me like her capable mother. That was the greatest gift. One evening, she asked me about the legal process. She wanted to understand. I brought out my notebook, the cheap one I'd bought with cash. She read it silently, her face growing still. She turned the pages of my calm, factual log. When she finished, she looked at me. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You were a detective," she said softly. "I was a witness," I corrected. "My own witness." She hugged me. She held on for a long time. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." "You are now," I said, and that was all that mattered. Time continued its slow, healing march. Seasons turned. Another spring came. I received a formal notice from the district attorney's office. It was a single page. It stated that, in light of the full civil restitution and compliance with the settlement terms, the criminal investigation into David Jenkins was being closed. No charges would be filed. There was a standard line about the decision not being a finding of innocence or guilt. It was a procedural conclusion. It felt anticlimactic. I had expected to feel something, anger perhaps at the lack of a public reckoning. But I felt nothing. The state had done its cost-benefit analysis. It was not worth their resources. I understood that. My justice had been in the recovery, not his punishment. I filed the letter. It was the last official document. I thought less and less about David and Clara. They became abstractions, characters from a story I had read long ago. Then, one rainy Tuesday, I saw Clara. I was at the grocery store. She was in the produce section alone. She looked smaller, thinner. She was staring at a display of oranges, not moving. Our eyes met. A complex wave of emotion passed over her face. Shock, shame, a plea for something, understanding maybe. I held her gaze for a count of 3. My expression was blank, not angry, not forgiving, just present. I saw her flinch. She looked down at the oranges. I turned my cart and went down the cereal aisle. My heart beat steadily. It did not race. That was the last time I saw either of them. My life rebuilt itself around new routines. The library volunteering. A weekly coffee with a friend from my gardening class. Long walks. I was not the same person I was before. I was more guarded, more deliberate. But I was not broken. I was reassembled, with stronger joints in the places that had been stressed. I began to write, not a journal of facts, just observations, about the birds at my feeder, the way the light hit the maple tree in October, small, beautiful things that asked nothing of me. It was a practice in paying attention to the world, not the trap within it. A full 2 years after the hearing, I received a letter from Anya Petrova. It was not a bill. It was a short, handwritten note on her office stationery. Evelyn asterisk. I don't often do this, but I wanted you to know. The State Bar's Ethics Committee has opened a review into the lawyer who represented your brother, based on patterns we uncovered. It's a slow process, but it's moving. I hope you are well. Best asterisk. Anya. I read it twice. Then I placed it in my filing cabinet in a folder marked closed. It was another quiet consequence. Ripples in a pond long after the stone had sunk. One afternoon, I was in the library sorting a donation of old travel books. I found a guide to the Pacific Northwest. I flipped through it idly. A photograph fell out. It was a picture of my mother, young, standing before a mountain. On the back, in her flowing script, "With David, age 4, he cried the whole hike." I stared at the photo, at her radiant, laughing face, at the blurry form of my little brother, a tiny scowl on his face. I had not seen this picture in decades. I'd forgotten it existed. I did not feel a surge of grief for my brother. I felt a deep, aching sorrow for the boy he was, the boy my mother was trying to cheer up on a hike. What happened to that boy? When did the wanting turn into taking? When did care become calculation? I would never know. It was his story, not mine. I took the photograph home. I did not put it in an album. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk, a piece of history, not to be displayed but not to be erased. Life, in its stubborn way, goes on. I celebrated my 70th birthday. Maya and her husband flew in. We had a small dinner. It was joyful. The fear of being vulnerable, of being tricked, still whispers sometimes. When a contractor gives an estimate, when a new form arrives in the mail. But now I have tools. I have a lawyer on retainer. I have a process. The whisper does not control me. It just reminds me to be careful. That is not a bad thing. I sit now in my favorite chair, the one by the window that looks out on my garden. The story is over. The legal battles are closed. The money is restored. The perpetrators are gone from my life. The quiet justice was achieved. It was slow. It was procedural. It was undramatic. It was real. I have my life, my home, my daughter. But the victory is not sweet. It is sober. It is the quiet of a house after a long, draining storm. The air is clear. The damage has been repaired. But you remember the sound of the wind. You remember the fear. You are just glad it is over. The question that remains is not about David, or Clara, or the law. It is about me. It is the one thing I turn over in the quiet moments. When did I become the kind of person someone could do that to? Was it the first time I said, "Thank you," instead of "let me think about it"? Was it the loneliness after my mother died? The cultural script that says family always knows best? Or was it simply that I trusted, and the trust was the weapon? I don't have an answer. I just have the question. It sits with me in the quiet afternoons. A gentle, persistent reminder. A scar that asks, in a soft, relentless voice, how do you ever know for sure that you are safe?